Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work.
Welcome to KIMEcast. All right, Russ. So as we've been talking, we started this thing when we started KIME almost 10 years ago now. It's been interesting. So we've been doing some interviews over the last few weeks for some of our new location that we have coming up. It's been super exciting because the applicant pool has been outstanding. So it's been super fun. But in kind of telling our story to each person about how we've got here and where we're at and what set it up, I go back to the two things of why we did start this in the first place. And the first being we wanted to bring an elite level of care and performance to the general customer, to the recreationally active person, to the high school athlete. But if we can bring something that's done at the pro level to the rest of the population, I think they deserve it. You think they deserve it. And there's certainly a way to do that. There's certainly been some things that we've done. That's what drove us to develop this in the first place. And then the other thing that drove us, the second component, which I've been describing to folks, was our passion to make it be a career possibility for every therapist, and what's expanded to be every employee in the company. And I think that's a big driving force for us, because we both felt very limited in the role that we had before and where we were at before. We were an outpatient practice that was growing, but there was a block to how much it could grow. There was a limiting goal that was set that didn't really want it to expand further. So for you and I to be able to be in a position where we could have a family and live in California, obviously not in the Bay Area, but still in California, and things are a little bit more expensive, or certainly they're pricey either way. That was really important to us to develop something that both did an outstanding work, brought in the best clinicians and brought in the best people to be part of the business, and then created a way that they could stay. And it's been amazing how much work we've done over the last 8 or 9 years to get to that point. So we've gotten more. We've gotten more established in our vocabulary of how we look at the business and what we call things. So now we have a process that we look at ourselves as wanting to be the employer of choice, which answers that one goal to an elite level. And then we want to be the provider of choice, which is the second goal at an elite level. And then our third strategic objective is to grow. But really growing, what that does is it proves that we're the provider of choice, and it creates opportunities for the employer of choice to be seen. There's really those top two kind of get the job done. I think they've been our focus from day one.
So detail that out though. Detail out when you say, because I love it, right? Bring excellence at the elite level, what you do for an Olympian or a pro athlete. We're going to do it for, the 15-year-old soccer player. What are some of the details? Like when you say that, I know you're visualizing something.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So obviously the evaluation strategies, let's look and properly diagnose the problem. Let's understand the whole person, what all they're going through, what is the demands of their life, what's the demands of their sport, of their game, of their position. And when you're looking with a pro athlete, you're looking at how does this person's body type, how is this person's history, how is this person's skill set improve the team? What do they contribute to the team that's unique? Usually it's something special or something unique. Otherwise, they'd find someone else to do it if it was just a standard thing. So I think I see the need for this more and more with everyone. Like people choose sports based on skill, right? People choose yoga because they're good at flexibility. I hate yoga because I'm bad at it. It's not bad. I don't actually dislike it. I just don't like doing it because it sucks. And yes, I should do it because it's totally agree, but I don't want to. It's my choice. But people are going to gravitate to things that they like to do and are good at, right? And they're still going to play sports that they're better attuned to, or they're going to play sports that they defaulted to for some reason, nonetheless. But so being able to evaluate the person, understand where the person's coming from, understand their role within their team, and then get into like the deeper diagnosis of like, hey, what's going on, what's the limiting factor, and then treat it with really targeted emphasis. So like, okay, we look at people and break it down to a couple segments. Is this a movement myofascial problem? Looking at layers of tissue and how the body moves, whether it be soft tissues or joints, or is it a load tolerance problem? Is it a growth problem as far as tissue maturity, tolerance of load, and things of that nature? Is it a trauma where they just had a blow that overcame a certain amount of force, and so therefore they ruptured a ligament or tore some cartilage or broke a bone or whatever it might be? So I think being able to get down and diagnose those things really, really clearly, and then put a plan together that incorporates all of the technologies and methodologies that we use at higher levels. I think that the traditional commonplace therapist right now and has been, unfortunately, for 30 or 40 years is, hey, here you have low back pain or you have an ankle sprain. Here's your sheet. Here's your exercise list.
And try this.
Yeah.
Try this.
Which everything I just talked about isn't on that list. That list is great for do these exercises. Yes, those exercises are traditionally good and they will help 60 to 80% of the people. Yes. But it's taking a detailed account of who you are, what brings you in, where you're at in the age continuum, what's your training age, how much has your tissue been loaded over time. All of those types of factors need to be taken into account to really maximize the process. So yes, when I say provider of choice, that's what I'm talking about, is doing it at that level and being able to connect with that person and deliver.
Now, everything you just said is basically what's between the ears of the clinician and the interaction with that person. I know there's some other things that allow elite sports medicine. When we envisioned KIME 10 years ago, we wanted it to do this. So there's phenomenal education to allow the brain to work at a high level for the clinician. What else? Because I know we had other technologies. We need the environment.
Yeah, the facility and the environment's massive. We wanted to change the game on the facility to make it be an inviting, motivating type of environment where it's more stimulating than a typical medical environment. So it's in a gym facility, and that gym has weights so that we have the unlimited ability to progress someone back to a normal level of athleticism. We like to have a concrete wall or brick wall so we can throw heavy medicine balls against it so we can be explosive. We interviewed a kid the other day that said that is, in his gym, the biggest, or in his PT clinic, the biggest weight they have is a 10-pound dumbbell, which I think makes it hard to load tissue enough to get progressive change, to say the least, I
remember at one of my community clinics I worked at before, I made a deadlift bar out of a broomstick. And that's I'm teaching deadlifts with a broomstick. That's what I've resorted to.
Yeah.
So you have all the weights and all of the gym and the boxes and the hurdles and the.
Well, you're just short of a few 5-gallon pails on each side, and then you would have had a home-based gym. You would have been perfect. It's definitely concerning to me that still happens in the profession, that this is still a practice. One, that there's a 10-pound dumbbell, and he said that he actually talked to the clinical director, the leader of the visionary of the center, if you will. And they thought that was an appropriate amount of weight to have, and anything more than that might hurt the people.
Perfect.
Which I'm not surprised with, because when we started doing kettlebell work and started challenging people with kettlebells, we too were scrutinized heavily by the community to say that, that's dangerous and it's unsafe. It's the unsafe thing is that you don't know what you're talking about. That's it's unsafe. What we're doing is long progressive hold work that actually matures tissue and gets it to change chemically, which you couldn't even have a conversation about because you don't understand the science of what we're doing. So it's insulting, but yes, the facility is huge. The environment of that facility is huge. The equipment available, they can progress someone to a higher level. I still don't think that we load people enough. I don't think that we challenge people enough compared to what goes on the field. I think we're at the Boris Classic last week, which is a great high school baseball tournament, and several of our team members are out there. And one of the biggest values we can get is to be there and hear the ball hit the glove at 92. When that happens, it changes the way you think about what you're doing in the clinic. When a kid starts talking about throwing, and you're like, well, I'm not sure. Yeah, my elbow's kind of sore. Should I throw? And then you hear the glove pop at 92, and you're like, hell no, you shouldn't throw. You're not even in the ballpark. I'm not sure you should run on the field, much less throw something on the field. It's unbelievable the amount of speed that the game has, and that how far short we are from a clinical standpoint to meet that level the game is played at. So those are some of a couple more things I was thinking of.
Yeah. I think I'm thinking of our brains back 10 years ago, and it was still kind of we wanted blood flow restriction, we wanted some capacity to compression. Mm-hmm. We still needed some kind of old school machines that felt a little more isolationary, which I think are still critical. I think, if you're living in a CrossFit gym and all you have are barbells and racks, it's actually No, I need some basic stuff and then some advanced stuff. And so you kind of need the whole continuum of just a good solid strength progression, symmetric progression, speed progression. So all of the tools, I know that's the environment, the tools, the space, and then between the ears.
Yeah. That's a great conversation about what equipment to have. And I think a good point that the bodybuilding mentality was, it was feared. And I was one of the ones too. It was like, I really don't want to have bodybuilding type things. Like, that's not really what I'd want. But as I kind of have learned and matured and grown up and had a variety of clients, there are several people that never need to go into a bodybuilding type of environment. Maybe they have enough core strength, or not core strength, but just foundational strength in their body where they don't need that localized type of load. And if they're healthy enough to challenge their body with just body weight load or with plyometrics or with more functional weight training, then of course I'm 1,000% moving in that direction. But there's so many folks who can't do that, who there's so many more comorbidities or other limiting factors that sometimes you can't do a deadlift, or you can't do a goblet squat, or you can't get into multi-joint loaded positions, so then you need to modify. And there's many ways to do that, but certainly the bodybuilding options are really good, really sound, and really available to people, worldwide, which I think is of huge value. So we can teach our people to hey, you can do this at home, you could do this anywhere you're at,
So, 10 years ago, this was rare. It was rare to have a PT in a gym-like type setting. It was rare for a physical therapist to have every strength, speed, and power, progression tool at their fingertips. And in the same spot, also have a treatment table that had tools to it and had some technologies that I'd still say some traditional ones like neuromuscular electrical stimulation, NMES combined with BFR is still, that I think that research is pretty solid there. So I some basic technologies at the table, and then some important kind of more critical strength progression tools. And that model 10 years ago was, I remember that data point. It was less than 1% of the entire physical therapy industry looked like that. But now it's growing. I think it's probably more like 5%, maybe even 5 to 10% of the of physical therapists out there kind of find themselves in that type of environment.
Yeah, one of the big, that goes to the employer of choice side of the coin, which I think both of these goals have been a really interesting challenge for us to get to. There's been many challenges along the way we may not have anticipated fully. I think it's amazing how much education is necessary, as you said, between the ears of the clinician. And how much the clinician has to be dedicated to developing those skill sets and have that passion, which our team is fantastic with. And that's what we're looking for in people to come on board. But there's still a tremendous amount of work being done there. That's not just it's easy because you're in the environment, which of course we knew to be true, but I think just how much there is to do from the point you get out of school or the point you've even been practicing. And this goes back to this whole conversation about the employer of choice. The amount of work we've done to create a system and a process and how to recognize excellence and recognize high performance, just those things when we look at years of experience, we actually aren't looking for a new team member or an existing team member. We're not interested in just years of experience. I've only been to BT because it makes no difference at all.
Yeah.
Whether you're a new grad or you're 5 years out or you're 20 years out, if you walk into our model, it really makes no difference. That number alone is irrelevant. The number that matters is how much have you done a real sports shit? Have you coached somebody? Yeah. Have you coached a team? Have you impacted people in personal training and actually worked with people to move them better? And then have you done real sports medicine? Actually worked with athletes that compete and had to deal with some of the challenges that they ask? Because I think the questions an athlete asks are 10 times more difficult than asked by the general population, because they're asking for not how do I walk again, or how do I not have back pain anymore? But they're asking, how do I go from throwing a ball 85 miles an hour to 92 miles an hour? And that's a very, very different process and a very different answer. These are vital. And if you're not used to that type of a question, then having 20 years experience in the space where you're not answering that question is really not that helpful in our model.
Well, if you look at the physical therapist as the Obi-Wan Kenobi at Star Wars, is the journeyman, the coach that facilitates the journey, then it definitely helps to have clinicians that have actually seen the end of that journey, the end being, let's perform. Have Have you climbed a tall peak? Have you been to soccer games and football games? Have you played? Have you experienced injury, done the rehab yourself, and then gone back on the field yourself? Have you coached a whole 10 athletes or 20 athletes or even 30 people in a fitness environment and had to say one cue to make 30 people move better and then help them sweat and lose 10 pounds of mass and gains 10 pounds of muscle with a hard program that challenges people? And when you've walked the walk and been through journeys and seen great coaches coach you, it then allows you to appreciate what this is all about. And if you've only been in one niche, or if you've only kind of seen like one aspect, you really lack breadth of what this human experience and purpose is all about. And if you have some variety in that flavor, then it's I think it helps you understand where we're all going. And that I really think it helps you capture the wholeness of the person, so that when you start working with people as a analyzing, reducing of movement down to the particulars of all the details that we like talking about, PTs like talking about, how much hip instrumentation do you need to have a 30-inch vert? Like we can get really granular because it's fun to get granular and knowledge-based. But if you can't appreciate the wholeness of someone's pursuit, because you haven't also pursued and been a part of that in a team environment or a group environment, it's hard to influence people, frankly.
Oh, tremendously. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. Can you actually see the end outcome, and appreciate the challenge that it is, appreciate the challenge for that client as to what it is they're trying to do. It's so unbelievable, like the speed of the game, the demands on the people, and you can't really reference like yourself, unless you were an elite Division I athlete or played in the pro level or semi-pro level or something. If you haven't been at that level of a speed and competition, it's really hard to like recognize it, honestly, because it's you would have this. We grew up. I mean, at least my generation grew up with the thinking that if you worked really hard and you trained really hard, you could improve yourself to be able to compete at that level. And I feel confident at this point that is no longer true. That you could get to the Division I level. Whether or not you make to the SEC or into the Big 12 is probably a different conversation. But you're likely to make it to the pros is just so unlikely. Like the giftedness of those people is insane. And so that brings us back to this idea of that type of athlete. No, you could interview the entire NBA and interview the entire NFL and interview the entire NHL and you name the league, MLB. And not one of those athletes is going to say that they're there because of what they did in the weight room.
Yeah.
Or they're there because that they learned in rehab. Like, that's not true. Yeah. And that's why they won't say it. That's not true. And if you go around them enough, you'll recognize that there's reason for that. The NFL guys taught me this like over the years. At first I couldn't believe it. And then it just started to become more and more obvious. Like, oh, like they don't really train. Like they don't really like to lift heavy and work out. Like it's something that we put on them as coaches as like, hey, let's lift more to get big and strong. And some guys do well with that, but that's not what the majority are doing. The majority are just naturally already there. And then maybe they're moved 5 or 10% that direction by a coach to make them a little bit better. But all of this is off the point. But the concept is if you're trying to like customize a person and like create a person, that's not the right direction to be going in from a provider of choice standpoint. What you need to be doing is look at the person in front of you and then optimize them for what they're trying to do and what they bring to the table. And that's a different way of thinking, which I think has challenged a lot of the evaluation models and a lot of the approaches out there in general. So like you have to move a certain way or do things a certain way, and then that just isn't true. So I've had too many guys that have scored an 8 on the functional movement screen and been a first-round draft pick and been in the league for 10 years, and I love the movement screen. I think it's phenomenal. Like I've used it for over 20 years. I think it's such a great tool. But if I was to just take the movement screen and say like, oh, this guy's a good athlete or not, that's not what it does. Mm-hmm. And a grade would say that's not what it does. So I think that's the hard part about being a great provider and why you need that sports experience is that there's more to it than you can learn all the stuff, but then you really have to be able to put all the stuff together and look at the person in front of you as a whole and bring it in. But I think one of the amazing journeys that we've made that have just continues to to surprise me is, one, how difficult that first part is, but really how difficult it is also to really be the employer of choice. Like the amount of processes and systems and things in place to create an environment so that every member of our team is rewarded for performance, rewarded for the work that they've done, and then encourage them to chase a certain level of performance that they may not have thought was eligible or was in their potential. But that just takes a tremendous amount of coaching and meeting and development of them into something so that they can do better than maybe they thought possible, or hit the number that they want to hit. Usually it's never about that with this population. It's always about serving the right number of people. But in order to serve those people really well, you have to be educated and do that first part. But then you also have to understand like how to connect with people and how to work with them and how to engage. And you kind of need to have someone teach you the art of the business and the complicated aspects of the business, like using insurance versus using cash, like getting authorization and note writing and all these other little skills that you may not associate with being a great provider, but they allow you to be a great provider. Because at the end of the day, the problem with this profession, and this makes perfect sense to me, that the burnout rate is that more than half the people leave after 5 years or whatever the hell the number is, but it's way too high, whatever it is. Well, the reason why they leave is because they don't know how to do it efficiently. So they end up drowning and still not making the money that they wanted to make. So they can't become a great outstanding provider because they can't even put in enough years to get there because they're so frustrated by their income that they can't survive. So you can't get great if you don't have the roots of it. We had the same conversation with track and field. It was crazy. We were high performance track and field meetings. Like this was like a serious topic with USA Track and Field about throwers, because most throwers in the Olympics are not 20. They're not 21 or 22. They're 26. And that's a huge problem because everything's paid for until the age of 22. And then all of a sudden you graduate college and now training is no longer free. Mm-hmm. And now the weight room is no longer free. Mm-hmm. And now your coach is no longer free. And you still have 4 years to go before you can be at an Olympic trials or an Olympic level. But if the U.S. wants to win medals, and we're the only non-government funded country in the world for the Olympics, by the way. So if the U.S. wants to win medals, we have to find a bridge to help an athlete that's not going to peak until 26 get there. Because they have 4 years to like try to make money and be the best athlete in the world in their sport. And so most don't do it.
Yep.
Which is the same we're seeing in this field, is that it's hard. And without the right mentorship training or having the right platform and system to work from, they can't get good enough before they leave the profession.
Yeah. I mean, to think about the books to read, let's call the books to read that maybe someone should read about 100 books, and maybe they should do about, maybe a few hundred hours of Con Ed. And that might take 5 to 7 years to kind of gain that education level. Then you got to apply that. So that's where the experience does come in. It's not so much that you need the experience to be great, but you need the experience to apply the wisdom that hopefully you captured from somewhere other than Instagram. So if you read the right books and went to the right Con Ed and got a lot of great information about actually how to do this, you really got to test the process with at least 500 to 1,000 people. So let's just say you're introduced to 250 people a year. Give yourself 4 years, introduce yourself to 1,000 people, and hopefully you have better success than the average. And if people just do safe exercise and let the pain be, they might have 50 to 70% of a success rate. So a successful clinician means you got to be better than, say, 60% of your people that should be getting better because of your influence. So you need a model that can handle someone to absorb that information and then have that success for 3 to 5 years with hopefully around 1,000 people. And hopefully they didn't get burnt out in the process. Hopefully they make good enough money to live. And hopefully they enjoy it and belong on a team that instills appreciation and says, thanks for being here. We enjoy you and you enjoy the process. Because if you don't enjoy this process, you tend to not stick with it.
Yeah, we both believe in the 10-year rule. I mean, this is really not a debatable law in the world, that if you do something for 10 years is kind of the number to kind of be great at it. That doesn't mean you can't be effective at 2 years. or at 1 year for that matter. It just means that excellence is seen at like a 10-year plan. Now, was one of the big things and one of the big pillars that we were all about in the beginning and still are, is that we feel like we can definitely shorten that window, that we can go from 10 years and bring that thing down, depending on the work ethic of the person in front of us that we're helping develop into a clinician, to probably certainly a 3 to 5 year level. They can be very, very good. And then they continue to refine and will be better and better. But I not traveled the country intentionally, but I visited and met with and had great opportunities to see and meet with a lot of amazing mentors and leaders in the field, and over a good 10 or 12 year run. And I have, looking back at it and reading all the stuff about the 10-year process, like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, it makes sense. But that still has to be like a focused pursuit. It can't just be like, oh, I've been 10 years. Like, it has to be like a focused effort. But nonetheless, I still think I think they can be shortened. That's what I'm determined to do within our organization, is shorten that time frame so that our people can achieve that much, much faster. And the reason being is that then they can impact more lives. They can impact more people in the community. It's not about, hey, we want to grow as a company and like, hey, let's grow as KIME because we want to have more. Everyone asks that. How many locations do you want to have? Whatever. We don't care. I don't care how many locations we have. We don't need any more. Doesn't matter to me. What matters is how many people can we serve. So I can't serve more people if I don't have clinicians that want to develop, that want to be on the team and that want to grow. So that, at the end of the day, is the most important thing in the company, is developing the clinicians and in developing a model where they can achieve financial independence, achieve financial freedom, have schedule autonomy, and be able to really pursue their efforts towards this level of excellence.
Yeah, and the only way that happens is if people are honored for that journey. You know, if you're paid the same amount of money as a newbie as you are as a phenomenal clinician, then it's clearly saying we don't really care whether or not you're good or not. So the model has to honor excellence, both like financially as well as, you know, appreciation of your title and accolades and whatnot. But it has to be a true honor system, a true translation of the value of the community translates to the value that the clinician gets in their bank account, or else it's all fake. And when you do that, I don't think there's as much burnout when people kind of get used to, I'm going to gain more with my brain between the ears. I'm going to be in an environment that allows me to use all the tools to do the right things in a sports medicine environment, and then get paid what I'm worth in doing that. And that should go up. That should go up the better you are here.
The more engaged you get. I mean, the more you lock into your community and to your patients and to the people around you, and then the more you commit to learning from them first and foremost, and then secondarily, I'm not a big reader. I mean, I certainly have read less than 10 books in my life.
You've listened to about 100.
I've listened to several, at least most of them. My favorite book ever was Think and Grow Rich, because that one told you right in the first what to do. It's like the first few chapters is like, if you understand the title of this book now, you don't have to listen any further. I'm like, I'm out. Yes, I understand it. But the topic is think and grow rich. And the idea is, if you apply thought and you really strategize how you're going to grow and develop as a person, then you can win. But if you just let shit happen and you just randomly like, oh, well, see what happens today, you know, then you're left to other people's choices for you. But I'm just consistently relatively surprised by the amount of work necessary and how much we've had to do and how much we continue to do to develop a good platform that's consistent, like with some of the rules we've put in place, you know? And because it's not about, like, what the last thing we want is, if you're working at an institution and you've been there for, 5 years and every year you get a raise, or you've been there for however many years and you just get a bonus because of, how long you've been there. Like, that model is gone. You don't even see that in corporate America anymore. And if you do see it, it's always associated with the second tagline of, this company laid off 2,500 jobs this quarter. they're constantly trimming the fat.
Or you're seeing 3 patients an hour now.
Exactly. It just, the rules, they're just going to make you perform more, right? It's a machine-based system. At the end of the day, there has to be profitability. So they're going to change the game. If they have a commitment to pay you more, they'll change your game until you fail or leave intentionally because you're miserable. We're not interested in playing that game. The game that we're playing is, if you want to come in and perform and engage, you can immediately be making money that some people are making 10 years out. But that's your choice. We have therapists on the ground right now that within 3 months of starting their career are financially as effective as people that are 20 years out.
Absolutely.
More effective in our own company. So it speaks to the fact that you don't have to have this tenure. That's not the point. The point is application of your skill set and working with the people in front of you and having a dedication, commitment, and a passion to have an impact on those people. That if you do that, and you're our number one person right now is the most committed to the people in front of them, and consistently says, I didn't really expect this, and the whatever it is just kind of a bonus, or she's like surprised that it's happening.
Yeah.
But the connection to the customer that she's serving is world class.
Well, to reflect on what allowed for that creation of the model, because what you're talking about is what our business is able to do for the clinicians on our platform. To create that platform, I'm thinking of all the things we had to dive deep into. It took just as much passion and work as it took to be a phenomenal clinician to then put that passion into what does the phenomenal business look like, and to master the line item list. I mean, if you look at a typical P&L of a business, you'll see accounting in general, and office and billing and insurance and credentialing and the customer service and all of the office technology and all of the IT embedded in that, and then the travels and the meals and the extra. Like, that line item is at least like 50 deep. And it took a mastery of every one of those line items. That's what it took. It's a weird mastery to say like, oh, yeah, I now understand marketing. Took 2, 3, 5 years, but after losing about $100,000 in different marketing ventures, now we get, at least to some degree, understand that bucket and how to advertise. That's just one. And to think about the business and what it took to master that. When I think about the clinicians that start a business after only a few years, I think their minds must explode. Because if it takes, again, 4 to 7 years to be, a halfway great clinician, holy cow, starting a business and learning everything that needs, or else you just start ignorant and you flounder, and what do you have then?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a definition to be had there as to starting a business. I think that there's clinicians that they create an organization and then they have jobs. They create a job for themselves and a job for several other people around them, and they have this amazing vision and passion to move forward, which is amazing, and I think is probably very positive for our field, that we have amazing people that are super passionate about it and so engaged to go grow something and do it differently and do it better, which I fully support. What concerns me is the longevity of that to be able to be continued. Where can that sustain for 5 or 10 years or 20 years? And then what happens? Does it have value? Too many people I've seen have maybe grown it, had a 4 or 5 person center that was killing it, and then those people start to move on because they have to have a career. And it's very difficult at the level of money that is a therapist or a doctor is deserving. In a small environment like that, it's very difficult to guarantee them a career if you don't have an unbelievable system and process in place to pretty much guarantee it. So that's the you see them wave up. They'll start with 1 person, they get 2, 3, 4 people, even 5, and then it will start to come off. You might lose 1 or 2, and then maybe they're down to 3 for a long time, and it's sputtering, and then it starts to kind of drop off a little bit, where it's hard to get substantial staff in place, and the staff is no longer the really high performers that it was 10 years ago when you set the vision, because you're out of energy, you're drained, your day is exhausting. I've said it from the beginning, like, you can't do this as one person.
No.
You can't do it well, that's for sure. I know that to be a fact. I mean, It's hard to have more passion and work ethic than I have and that you have. And us together still isn't enough people to get this thing to where it needs to be. We have an amazing group of people that we work with to kind of get this in the position that it is to continue to serve our people, which then allows it to serve a much larger group of the community. So it's just such an effort there it's really tremendous. But if you think about, we were talking about other businesses like outside of this space and companies, and I think you see that type of a trend where it's almost like a startup. These startups have all this passion, all this engagement, and it's all about increasing value, and like, oh man, look at all this growth we're having, da-da-da. And then something happens, either gets bought by a bigger conglomerate, and then all the passion goes away. This has been the most amazing thing, talking with tech people or whoever. They build a business, they sell it. Yes, they become like almost independently wealthy, they have all this money. But then talking to them like a year into the process, they're all like, oh yeah, the company that bought us has basically just killed us. I mean, I know everyone. I can't think of an example where that's not the story. That I built up this thing I was so proud of, and it was so impactful, and it was great. And we ran it for, somewhere like 5 to 10 years, and then we sold it to this group that was awesome. And they basically just like stuck it in the corner and like said, that's not going to do anything else. Like, we're done with that. They're like, why did you buy it then? We just bought it and killed it.
What are they even buying? And I wonder if people are buying somehow, intellectual property, they're buying leads, or they're buying some customer acquisition or market share, but it's all, they're not buying culture, because it seems like a lot of times the culture is just destroyed.
No, it's just a money game. It's just a money play. Like, they even had to write off some expenses and reinvest in something developing, or they needed that revenue to show for that quarter. Like a lot of the stuff now is like, because especially if the company's publicly traded, they just want to show quarterly wins because that's how the stock changes value. So they'll just buy a company that's worth a couple $1 million just to throw it on their balance sheet, so that when the stock hits the quarter, we generated an extra 10 million because we bought that company that's doing 10 million. Okay, well then the first day of the next quarter, that company is gone, and we're going to buy a company for 20 million. And that's just the game they play. What I'm trying to say here is that running a business is a very different thing than having a clinic and being a practitioner. And I think there's also, we're talking about leaders. I think the business leaders are. It's really tremendous too if you start breaking it out what it's like out there, where you have guys like CEO guys that are really good at doing very, very specific things, like taking a company from like 25 employees to like 200 employees, taking a group from like 200 employees to 1,000 employees, or typically 500 is the number, and then 500 to 1,000, and then 1,000 to 10,000. And like, there's CEOs that just do that, and they go on these like 5 to 7 year runs, and they just do that. And then the leadership team exits, and the next group comes in that takes it to the next phase. And the successful ones, that's what's happening. It's because it's hard. It's hard to be who you are as a leader, and then be able to change in the way that your business needs you to change, so that the business can continue to be successful and you have something beyond you. It's interesting, but and it's rare, but you see it in these companies too. You see these like companies that like Tesla. We were talking about Tesla and Elon, but he owns like 5 companies. But all of Elon's companies are all like world changing,
transformative.
They're transformative.
They disrupt. There wasn't a business, and then he made a business.
It wasn't even an industry. Like electric cars, it wasn't an industry. And then he designed something that's better than any car that was on the road, like gas powered. And it's sustained for 10 years. Right. And like, let's go live in space. Like, do you want to go for the day? Yeah, we could do that. Like, that wasn't a thing.
It does seem, if you want to disrupt an industry and be truly different, it's easy to be, not easy, oh my gosh, but it is insanely difficult. Let's just say nearly impossible, or the art of impossible, to go from something that didn't exist to all of a sudden, we've created an industry, we've created a niche, we've created a subgroup. But once you disrupt the industry, and you've kind of gone through your transformative growth, it is hard to kind of, become, just a regular good company that continues its growth. It's a whole different
sustained performance. That's it. I think Elon's amazing. Like, love him, respect him dearly, but you can kind of, I'm on the outside by a mile, but watching it is interesting. Like, everyone talks about Tesla sputtering, and he's not, he even said, he goes, it's no longer a growth stock. It's no longer a growth company that way. And you just see things starting to flutter a little bit. And of course, he's very open, so there's a lot more conversation about it, but it's interesting. Whereas a group like, a perennial, consistent, deliverable group like a Starbucks or like Ford, or even a group like FedEx, groups that have been doing the same thing for just perennial years. They grow in market share slightly, but it's really about just delivering the same consistent product. And it's not as sexy anymore because it's not on the screen. There's a different leadership in those groups to manage it.
Well, 10 years ago, we were the disruptor in our region, and no one heard about us. And then we started, and we were new and interesting and fresh in the doctor's eyes. And now fast forward 10 years later, we're not the disruptor anymore. We are, I think we're a little bit seen as, that's the standard. Hopefully we have become the sports medicine standard, but we've become a little more of the standard. And it is interesting to kind of like, almost sense that emotional difference of 10 years ago, that's not being done. Let's do it like this. And then, and now it's, we're talking a lot about 401ks. We talk about the medical benefits because those are very important. We didn't talk about that 10 years ago. Not to say that we're the next Ford, but it is interesting the emotional weight of where do you put your energy? Because leadership can only focus on so many things at once, and how many things are there left to disrupt? If or do we focus on just doing things at a great level so that people join us and grow within the company? I want to say it's boring. This is a very different focus.
Well, yeah, it's clear. You focus on, for us, it's a choice to focus on the people, because if we have great people, then great things evolve. We're not trying to be a growth company like Tesla. The reason we want to grow is so that it helps our people that are working with us so they can grow, But it's amazing the challenges that are out there and that you face. I think, so last week I was in Hawaii. This kind of a same topic, but a unicorn, if you will. So I was in Hawaii, and it was, oddly enough, we're getting shave ice, which is kind of a standard that you have to do as a staple. We're actually on our way to the airport, so we stopped for the last time after lunch at this place. And people are, there's a guy there who's like eating at one of the picnic tables, and he's there with his wife. And then people are going up to him and taking pictures and stuff with him. And I'm like, I wonder who this is, So it turns out it's Jensen from NVIDIA. All right, so he's only worth $62 billion. So sitting there just at the picnic table, just hanging out, right? And I was like, well, that's kind of, everybody's like, that's just kind of awesome, he's very social, he's very engaging CEO, but he's a super authentic. He's the only guy that I know of that he's been the CEO of the company for 40 years. And from nothing, from invention of the chip to running arguably the biggest tech company in the world right now, because he pretty much is controlling AI, because his AI is built on his chip. It's just insane that one person did all of those things and defied everything we just talked about and did it. So it's certainly possible. But anyways, it's pretty impressive. So
yeah, I read a recent post about him and talking about the principles that guided him during all the times where the industry was a bit stagnant or growth potential was unknown, but they stuck with their principles. And that does go back to joining a team, running this business. What were the principles that really kind of founded it? And I think that goes back, if I look back at 10 years ago, and we knew we wanted to disrupt the industry. And how do we want to disrupt it? We wanted to treat everyone like an athlete. And what does that mean? We want to treat the clinician like we give a damn about you. We want you to have a career here. And how do we make that happen? And to do those things at the same time, it means that we had to truly ask, what do patients need? What do athletes need? And then what does a phenomenal sports physical therapist look like? What are the benchmarks for success? What do they need? What do they want? And then how far can they go? What does a phenomenal career look like in this? And with we had a fierce focus on that. I think we still have a fierce focus. I know we do. And that's our top two objectives.
That's it. That is the focus. Yes. We're in a different phase of it now where we figured that out for the moment, and establish a resource and a tool and a strategy and all these methods to then help them grow to that. And there's going to be more and more challenges along the way as to, does it work? Does it not work? How can it work a little bit better? Different people have different needs, so there'll be different variations of it. But yeah, that's it. That's what it comes down to. Is the summary is, we first started with this idea really to be the provider of choice at the end of the day, to serve the patient the best, as you said, and then we've always wanted this to be a great employer. And I think the clarity that we have discovered over the last couple of years has been, if we're the employer of choice first, if we actually employ the best, train the best, engage the best, pay the best, then they'll be the best provider, right? They have the potential and will be the best providers. Versus the opposite, if we have the very best providers, we don't reward them, they're not paid well, they don't see longevity and such, then there's a good chance they'll grow, but then exit.
And you almost need that. That'd be interesting. Yeah. An interesting measure is, I think we had a wrong goal a few years ago. We had a goal of 100% retention,
right?
And that was we were learning. 100% retention means that our recruitment we'd have to hit 1,000. We'd have to hit a home run every at bat with someone. Out of 10 interviews, we'd bring all 10 in, and they would all be wonderfully successful on our platform. There's no way that's going to happen. We're going to have people that thought they wanted to work hard, but realized maybe they don't have the capacity to grow between the ears enough to influence the person in front of them. And those people have to leave because they're not going to find success on our platform if you're not willing to put in the time and energy to be great. And it's because not all people are designed to do that. There's many people in physical therapy and in the entire industry that are designed to do things a little bit differently than what the community needs from us, from an elite sports medicine physical therapist. And so 100% retention was a poor goal. We actually need people to leave the company. And that'd be an interesting measure of success, of how well does a team bring on someone and lose them because, we made a mistake in the interview. We made a mistake in that hire, and that's okay. We're going to get better. Yeah. But if you don't have people leave the company, that means that you're not having people finding phenomenal success either. You can't have it both. If you just keep everyone
just neutral
and everyone's great, everyone's good, everyone deserves elite pay. If everyone deserves it, then no one deserves it. Then you cannot have a lack of polarity in this. If you're going to have elite pay in a company, then you have to reward elite performance, and you have to establish what does that look like.
Yeah. That made me laugh as I was thinking about this. This was years ago. This guy said this to me. So we talk about elite performance, right? So this guy played in the NFL. He's an NFL quarterback. And then he had a relatively short career in the NFL, but just a specimen and really committed, really, really smart guy. And a Jesuit guy, as a matter of fact. And he came back, and we were working with him. He came on and joined a group I was with in the past as like a strength coach and like performance coach for throwing as well as for strength conditioning and stuff. He was actually really, really bright. And one of the things he said as we were talking through strategy and performance and stuff, and he's like, well, Tone, the reality is that 90% of people aren't good at what they do. And at first, I was fairly young in my career at that time. I was like, wow, that's a big percentage. 90% are not good at what they do. I have no idea where that stat came from. I can't say I've seen it anywhere else or heard it from anyone else, but I'm saying, I have to say, I see where he's coming from. I have no idea if it's a good stat or not. When we talk about elite performance, that's what we are talking about. It's probably that top 10%. We are talking about a percentage that's different. Now, but if you think about the amount of people in the world, that's still a hell of a lot of people. And if you talk about even the number of healthcare providers, that's a hell of a lot of people, And I would say this would be true, like in a class, in a therapy class of 30 people or so, or if you're at a bigger school with 60 or 90 people, 10% of them are going to be elite, which out of 30, that means you have 3. And out of 90, you have 9 or 10.
And I could see,
feels about right.
I imagine the listener would be asking, well, how do you define elite? And then I would want to say that the person in front of you is doing elite things. And elite things, by definition, are not done by many. They're done by very few.
Yeah.
So if that person's working hard enough to accomplish an elite amount of performance out of their body and mind and spirit and wholeness of what they do in a physical venture, let's be real. We're talking about sports medicine. We can kind of flex that to military and flex that to firefighting and talk about elite hiking, but it's really, physical movement. If we're accomplishing things with our bodies physically in an elite fashion, then hopefully that person also has an elite PT.
Yeah, well, we measure this. We measure what's elite in our field, like what's elite by our PTs at least, and by our therapists as what's their impact. We're not measuring their eliteness. The clients are. If the clients are loving what you're doing, then they're going to continue to come and they're going to send friends and family and others, and it's going to be pretty apparent. Your performance is going to be pretty apparent, and your schedule is going to be full, and people are going to want your brain. They're going to want your knowledge. They're going to want you to share what you've shared with others because you've had impact on people. That's who's doing it elitely. Now, just because your schedule's full, if someone else made it full for you, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
If you got your own schedule full because of your own network and people that you've seen in the past and the people have told their friends, and that's who's filling your schedule, then that's your true measure of are you doing elite things? Because you're changing people. You're changing the industry. You're doing amazing elite work.
Yeah, I think, again, for the listener, you used a key word, you used network, and I myself always looked at myself in the beginning of my career as a horrible networker. I hated it. I couldn't stand it. Didn't want to even be good at it. If you said like, oh, Russ, here's a sales book, go and read it. Definitely did not want to read that. It was very anti-sales and anti the word network. And then one day after trying really hard for many, many years, I get a call from a trainer, and I get a call from a coach, and then I get a call from a doctor. And then I'm not an asshole, so I'm going to text them back and call them back and connect with them. And then my network grew one day. And it didn't grow from me trying to grow my network. It grew from me trying my hardest with people in front of me, and opportunities come, and then I just communicated right back. And so I think for the listener, it's not demanding a networker. It's just demanding excellence and being ready for the opportunities because they'll present themselves.
100%. I was going to say you're still not a very good networker.
Yeah, I can't stand it.
But then I would say beyond that probably nobody is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a politician then. Or you walk into a room and tell a bunch of lies.
Yeah.
Like that's bullshit. Like who wants that? Nobody wants that. Yeah. Like, which is why I think we have so much trouble with what's going on right now in our country. But if you just do the right thing, it's amazing how people will respond. Especially now because it's so damn rare.
It's 90% rare.
I mean, that someone does something good in healthcare, there's a good provider, hey, they answered the phone, hey, they delivered, they knew what they were talking about, they spent time with me and listened to my problem and then gave me a plan or a solution, oh my God, it'd be floored.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's insanity.
Well, all this, I think we're talking about this as if it's all just, obvious to people. But when you look at business, it's not obvious to business.
No.
The majority of healthcare businesses do not operate in this performance mindset. They don't. Ask them how their pay structure is. Ask how they get new business. Ask how they reward employees for impacting the community in positive ways. Ask if they have reviews. It's really clear that this is not normal. And then, the big question to me is this seems the only way to live a life worth living is to participate in this type of game.
Yeah, but the scary thing is that if you ask them what their strategies are, they'd say they're the same.
Yes.
Everyone's saying, I'm the employer of choice and we want to be the provider of choice.
And the words are there.
And look how busy we are. But the problem is that they're busy because they bought those people or because they accepted an insurance that only allows certain people to come to them or whatever it is. So they have this huge amount of influx of people that haven't really been earned by quality. They've been earned by contract.
Yeah, it's subsidized in some way by a contract.
And then they pay their people very well, but it has nothing to do with performance. They just pay them well because they know they have to compete. But then they bury them with work. So there's no way the person could be elite.
Yeah. Boom. And that's the catch.
That's the thing. So you have to listen to the words being said, and then you have to actually look at how they're getting it done.
Yeah.
Right? And the hard part in our field right now is it's easy to say, yes, hey, someone else will pay me a lot of money. Yeah, but understand if they're going to pay you a lot of money, it's going to be on your ass to make sure you produce a certain amount of people. and certain amount of care. You're going to have to bill a certain way. You're not going to get to see who you want to see. And you're going to, instead of having time with people, you're going to have less time and more volume. It's the simplest game in the world. But if you don't see it, and you don't ask the right questions, and you don't see that the company is led by ethics, even though they are supposedly nonprofit.
So I wonder if I could be so bold as to say an environment that gives you elite level pay without demanding you be an elite PT, I'm not sure if you could ever become elite.
You can't.
In an environment.
You can't. And the biggest thing you should be concerned about is that if you're really expensive and high quality, high performance is not required, then that process is very close to automation, which means that you're out.
Yeah.
In the near future.
You're the easiest cut.
And then, the easiest one, that's when you see the 2,500 job cuts. Or like, you were at a hospital system that not the place you were at, but they closed down the whole therapy department.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would they have one? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any money.
Yeah, I'm still amazed that hospitals even have a PT department. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
And I know they charge a ton, but they micromanage the crap out of it.
Their line item must be 0.0001% on their P&L of what's PT mean as business. Nothing.
It's just make any sense at all. I mean, it's just a logistical and admin nightmare for like the benefit they would get. And they're not getting anything out of it because there's no PT on the board of the hospital.
Yeah. The worst thing is obviously we're passionate about this career in this industry. And I love helping people, and I love the influence that we make. It's such a shame that such a powerful venture that can change people's lives is not even remotely valued in any hospital system.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, there's so much potential for it to be better. That's what we're after.
But like you said, if it's automated too, you're the first to cut.
Yeah, and that's if you're just handing out a piece of paper, that's where you're at.
Yeah. Well, if I'm a board of directors of some big, huge hospital chain, and I'm looking to automate the whole thing.
Absolutely. If it costs $1 million to run a department, and that department is replaceable with Google, which it is. Low back pain, show me the top 5 exercises, print out the sheet. I mean, you just replaced yourself.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah. Give me the videos. It hurts right here. Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's automated. That's now, and then you could say, oh, well, I do a few extra things. Yeah, maybe so, but maybe probably not enough to really like move the needle.
I think that's a great exercise every listener should do. Go ahead and in your most recent pain syndrome, go ahead and ask any of the AI engines. And be really specific. It hurts right here when I do these things, and this is where I'm at. And check, see how good it is.
It's insane. You'll be shocked. It's insane. And it can call for, you have to prompt it correctly, so you can probably even cue that a little further. But it will give you the research site, the data. I mean,
it should give you the shivers if you're not of value to the world.
Whew. Yes,
it should be It should be.
Because now information is not what's in shorthand anymore. What's in shorthand is your ability to look at the information and make a decision with the person who's live in front of you. That's what's different. It's coaching. It's being able to make that connection and having the time to do so. And of course, the knowledge or expertise behind you to then be able to apply, to implement.
I mean, if the stat I said before, I read that research 10 years ago. I don't know where it's at now, but when people have a pain syndrome, 50 to 70% of the time, just safe exercise is going to help them most of the time. And so then, let's double down on that. Let's have them get powered with their phone. Now let's say just safe exercise, and then your phone's going to help you. Now let's see how good, maybe you're better 75% of the time, 80% of the time. So you really have to ask, well, where's there room for us? And if the majority of the time people can just be helped with nearly a free solution, what value do we have? And if we can't go down the deep dive of becoming elite, then I'd say we probably have no value, and we should probably be cut.
Couldn't agree more.
What's a negative thought? We can't finish on that thought.
No. Well, I'll finish on this thought then. So I just did this eval 4 hours ago on this guy who was exactly that case. Okay, the guy's 80 years old, and was referred to me by his personal trainer, and he's active. He likes to go bird watching and hiking and walking and stuff. And he does 10,000 steps a day. As a matter of fact, I was shocked when he said that one to me. I'm like, really? Like, great, the guy's in great shape. But he's like, I can't stand up straight. 6 weeks ago, my back started hurting. Can't stand up straight. So of course he does an HMO or organization insurance. So he went through the project, went to PT, said it was helpful, showed me the 5 exercises, which were double kneaded chest, lower trunk rotations, ride the bike. The other ones were stupid. Supine clamshells, but with a band. But he hates it because he can't get the band around his ankles because he's 80. What are we doing?
That's
Unbelievable. And the other one was dumb. I can't remember what it was. It was so dumb. But anyway, his pain had gotten better, which is great. Got an MRI, and his MRI says that basically L2 through 5 is shot. Central stenosis at L2 and 3, foraminal stenosis at 4, 5, and S1, and everything mostly on the right side, which is where he had radicular pain. He has numb right fifth metatarsal and then numbness down the right side of around his IT band. I'm like, bro, that MRI didn't happen on February 16th when you got hurt. I can promise you that. And he's like, yeah, I agree. I'm like, so and he's like, so his complaint was my posture's been flexed for a while and now it's more flexed and I don't want to be bent over. That was what he was in for. Really good care less about his leg pain, and it wasn't severe, but that was his problem. And he's like, I don't think that what I'm doing is helping. And so his trainer sent him to me to do it. So yes. So if you put him into AI, it's probably not going to tell you to do what I did with him because his MRI shows, he definitely is a surgical candidate from an MRI standpoint and from a movement standpoint. Although it's relatively acute still, he could be an injection candidate for sure, which he's open to the injection. Of course, he doesn't really want to have surgery on his back at 80, but that's changed a lot in a few years. I'm not so against it. But anyways, the goal is you want to be able to do extension. So I'm like, can you lay on your stomach? Can we at least get into an extended position? He said laying on his back is tough at first, but then he adapts to it. Okay, let's see if he lay on his stomach for a few minutes. I was shocked. So he went totally straight. Now he's only flexed like 10 degrees. So he went totally straight and we were there for a while. He got up, wasn't even sore or anything. I'm like, dude, I think you got a shot at this. Like, I think we can get there. So we did a few other things. We actually did a few more flexion-based things just to get a movement. I wanted to increase the spectrum movement first. And then I told him we'll work more into the extension movement specifically, but that's more likely to flare you up. And he was still coming off of some inflammation, you could tell by his sensitivity. And he's really sore and painful locally on the right side. So we had to do some local stuff to that. But it was bringing it all together. And at the end of the session was, he paid cash, by the way. At the end of the session, when do I see you again? When can I see you again? I want to schedule the next one because I want to move down this path, right? And I'm not trying to say that I do it better than anyone else or anything, but that's when you do it right and you have the right, that's what the response should be.
Yeah. Yeah. When can I get in again? Yeah, there's a great quote.
There's no sales to be had. Like, I'm not going to upsell. I'm not upselling you on anything. And this is what you should do. This is best practice because of X, Y, and Z of what I see in your movement, your body, your MRI, whatever it is, your whole story. So do this.
Yeah.
And when you nail it, they look at you and say like, I understand.
When can I go again?
When can we do this again?
I understand.
Yeah. All right, thanks for listening to the KIMEcast. If you guys have some contributions, if you have some questions, thoughts on the topic, please share it in the comments. We'd love to bring it up in the future, respond to you directly there. So appreciate your time and listening and watching.